Okay, so life after mid and choosing your work. Well, as you know, senior year is an exceptional time in your life. Because it's so much fun, it's probably going to pass pretty quickly. The decision before you will increasingly become, how will you take some of the best of what you've experienced and learned here at Middlebury into the so-called real world? How will you choose your work? Today we're going to introduce you to an informed decision-making process for career selection. And in a few moments, Susan is going to take us through the key elements of conducting an effective job search, namely research, networking, and interviewing. So, but why is it important to understand the job search process in the first place? Knowledge is truly power in this case. Knowledge of what your choices are empowers your selection among them. We suggest that you're going to spend an average of 60% of your waking time in job-related activity. Makes sense to focus on how you got into that job in the first place and what the decision-making process was behind getting in that job. But we think it's a process you can master quite quickly with a little effort on your part, some coaching on ours. Speaking of coaching, Susan and I presented at the athletics coaches meeting about a month ago, the pre-game meeting. Susan made a very apt analogy of your process you're facing now. That was to how you would prepare yourself conditioning-wise for an upcoming athletics match. So certainly you wouldn't go, and immediately jump into a basketball game, baseball game, etc. You would do some practice. You would do some research. You would get yourself conditioned and ready. Exact same thing here. You're going to be doing some research. You're going to be doing some networking. You're going to be doing some practice interviewing prior to the big game. Big game in this case is the interviews themselves. So just be aware, you're all very good at this process already. You just don't know it. But we will work with you specifically to help you and to coach you through this process. One of the things we find is that Middlebury students outcompete their Ivy League colleagues in New York City at many of our Super Saturday and final interview events. Again, go mid. So what if you are admittedly clueless? Well, that's actually pretty good. That's a neutral state, and you're actually more coachable from a career counseling standpoint. Most people don't really know what the careers are out there. The liberal arts is broad by design. There's 20,000 job titles in the Department of Labor's occupational guide. How would you know what's available for you? There's another interesting point, which is the senior year is an intersection, if you will, between the maximum number of influencers upon you. You've got the parental hand-me-down dreams. You've got your peer thing going on. You've got the labor market itself with its career de jours type jobs. But it's also at the same time you have the least amount of experience with careers themselves. So here you're trying to make a decision with maximal outside influence, minimal knowledge. And so it makes for not only an interesting process, but one for which you need to spend a little more time self-educating. And that is primarily what this session is going to be about. Okay, so we encourage you to take a little bit of time to untangle where your own personality, interests, values, and skills will lead you. We don't expect you to figure out the end game. Most U.S. workers change jobs or careers actually 7 times in their macro cycle. We'd like you to try to figure out what's the next step for you after Middlebury and how that step will inform the following steps you'll take. So for now, you can start with talking with friends, family, faculty, and of course alumni about what they see you doing professionally. You can look on Midnet and see what last year's grads with your major are doing and the last 3 years' grads and just get a sense of what do people actually do with a Middlebury degree out there. If you want, you can contact them. Susan will give you more on that. And then, of course, we have the Do What You Want Occupational Personality Workshop, which will delve into this process more deeply on October 25th. So why bother when you can just go to law school? Well, not to pick on would-be lawyers. In fact, it's an outstanding profession for those who truly understand what law is and are truly interested in actually practicing law after law school. Unfortunately, law school is the #1 default option of liberal arts grads, and it can be very problematic for a number of reasons. So we strongly encourage you to go into your future decision-making with eyes wide open. There's a couple typical tactics that Middlebury students use, that anything that pays $30,000 in Boston, or the most popular Middlebury senior tactic of really looking only at the carefully prepackaged 1 or 2 year bridge experiences on the way to graduate school. These are not bad things. We just want you to be aware of what all your choices are and evaluate them accordingly. So today's job market. I've given you a copy, that's the pink copy right here, the NACE research piece. that just came out, actually. This is from the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And it suggests the fifth row in a year, your class is going to see double-digit growth in entry-level hiring. Okay, this is good news. In fact, it's going to be about 16% increase over last year. This is a survey done of 1,208 member employers, and those are the types that hire college graduates. Employers in the Northeast are projected to increase the class of 2008 graduates by 15.7%. That's comparable, for example, on the West Coast. It's actually only about 4.1%. So you guys are positioned pretty well here. It means you just have to work a little harder if you're interested in the West Coast. We've seen some significant volatility in the stock markets recently. We have some good news this week, the largest one-day gain in 5 years. Pretty positive information from the Fed on interest rates. And for those of you who want more of that type of information, on September 25th, Tom Michaud is going to be here for our senior Super Saturday keynote, talking about what the markets are looking like, the volatility, and what that means for seniors in the job search process. Okay, so what do employers seek, and what do you liberal arts grads offer? So you're about to enter the labor market. And there's no test here. I'm going to give you the answers. What do employers seek when they're surveyed on that? This is out of 5.0. Okay, I'll just go over a couple of top quick ones. Communication, honesty, integrity, teamwork, interpersonal motivation, analytic abilities, flexibility, and so on. And then, of course, at the bottom, any type of experience is fantastic in the employer's eyes. I pull off co-op because we don't have that in Middlebury, but rated about 4% as well, or 4 points. So here's the question then. This is what they're looking for. What do you guys offer? What are you bringing to the table? What's the viability of the liberal arts? Drum roll. Huge alignment here. Okay. So for those of you who feel you have nothing to offer the labor market, what you're really thinking is you have no content skills. You will actually be trained on the job for those content skills. You have transferable skills. This is what employers say they want. This is why they come and hire Middlebury graduates or liberal arts graduates in general. It's really critical you understand the difference between content and transferable. Transferable are core professional competencies. We've given you a huge list of them, the purple sheet. These are also on our website. The key tip here is that in interviews, you can give a story or an example of your communication skills, of your critical thinking skills, of your teamwork skills. It's not enough just to have these. It's essential that you understand in interviews you have to explain how you have these. You have to have a couple vignettes rolling around in your head about my teamwork, my communication, etc., as mentioned. Okay, let's look back and see if we can learn a little bit from history. We've been giving you a lot of information from the class of 2007. Here's some more. This was done from the senior survey. So again, this was April. 31% of the class was employed. About 10% were going immediately to graduate school. Still searching, 32. Internship, fellowship, 5. No plans, waiting, or travel, 22%. This is actually very typical. The Middlebury class is very typical of the NESCAC score. About a third of the students have jobs. Now you may say, that doesn't sound very high. You have to remember the majority of Middlebury students haven't actually entered the job search process at the point of graduation as defined by 5 or more hours per week. So of those who are actually looking and actively looking, it's a pretty solid number. The graduate school number is a little bit low right now. We usually see it go between 10 and 15%. We think that's because the economy is doing pretty well, so people are holding back in graduate school. We see that number go up dramatically as soon as the economy tanks. So it's a 2-year ducking out, if you will.